Hello and welcome to the Customers Who Click podcast. Today I'll be speaking with Mick Rigby, the CEO of Yodel Mobile, one of the best mobile growth agencies around. We're going to be chatting about the mobile customer journey and how it differs to the standard digital journey you'd expect online, how the marketing mix differs, particularly as channels such as Facebook have become quite congested, and some top tips on how to approach launching a mobile proposition for your business. Having worked in mobile from the very start of my career, I know how different it is for both the customer and the business. Your approach to acquisition is different, onboarding is different, and retention is different. And I think a big part of this is that in a lot of cases, the app itself is the product or service. And there's definitely an attitude of if you build it, they will come. And because of this, a lot of businesses are failing to properly engage and retain their customers. But without further ado, here's Mick Rigby. Hi, Mick. Welcome to the podcast. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself? Why do you do what you do?
Hi, Will. Wow. Straight in there, mate. Do you know what? I've been working in business for probably 25 years or more. And I guess at the moment, this is the most exciting time in the most exciting industry I've ever been in. So I genuinely enjoy working in this app marketing element, part of the mobile infrastructure.
So what does a standard day look like in the life of Mick Rigby?
So just for your listeners, this is currently being recorded 24th of March. So we're just on coronavirus lockdown. So very different today than normal.
Probably changed quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, but a typical day, which will hopefully be back in the next sort of couple of months' time. What would I do? So I normally get the train early in the morning, usually just after 7. So I'll probably do about 15 minutes of headspace meditation on the train, and then just crack on with emails, doing working documentation, planning the day out. So when I do get into work, I tend to spend the morning sitting down with various members of the teams, troubleshooting, putting together new business proposals, that kind of stuff. Afternoon tends to be sort of documentation work, and then pretty much same on the train journey home. But I'm a great believer in making the most of my time, my work time, and then when I do get home, I'm at home, and that's it for the day. I try not to look at emails or respond in the evening or night time to requests.
Yeah, so you're not a get up at 5 a.m, do an hour of work, then get on the train, and then when you're back, do an extra hour and always on Slack or emails.
No, I mean, interesting you mentioned Slack. Slack is a challenge. Slack can infiltrate your life when you least expect it on your mobile phone or your laptop or your iPod. So learning to manage Slack is I think something that I'm really trying to get my head around at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. Really great tool, but it can dominate your day. If you're not careful, you can get really bogged down.
That's it. I mean, if you don't turn it off, or you don't turn off your notifications, and you're trying to write some strategic work or do some planning, it's really difficult to concentrate.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the company. Tell us a bit about Yodel.
Yeah. So we are an app growth agency. We are a global player, although we're primarily based in London. We do have representatives over in the States. Most of our business is over there, but we've been around for about 13 years now. We launched before the iPhone as a mobile agency, so hence the name Yodel Mobile rather than Yodel Growth or Yodel App. But our focus is, I guess, ensuring that our clients' app businesses are as successful as possible. So we do full end-to-end app growth support on any client from a marketing perspective. So everything from organic discovery, paid user acquisition, through to virality, user retention, data architecture, that kind of stuff. We're pretty much a one-stop shop for anybody that has an app and they want that app to be as successful as it possibly can be.
Okay, great. And when you mention retention, does that include things like CRM, or are you more focused on how the app itself can work to retain people?
Yeah, I mean, CRM plays a really big part of that. The biggest challenge for any app business is retaining their users. It's not often talked about in the space, where most businesses and most app publishers are all looking for user acquisition. That's great. But if you're not retaining those users, then you don't have a business. And I think it's on average, it's about, you lose about 80% of your users within 3 months on average across the app space. So, arguably 80% of every penny you spend in user acquisition has been wasted after 3 months. So CRM, utilizing the tools, whether that be email or push notification, in-app messaging, to bring people back into the app at the right time for the right reasons, is a vital part of building up that relationship with those users.
I'm glad you mentioned the right time for the user and the right reasons. I think some companies get a bit over enthusiastic about it and send out a few too many pushes, or they might pick up on what they feel is an opportunity to send someone a push, but actually it's a bit intrusive. There's no real need for the message. Whereas the apps that do it on behavior and have smart triggers in place, they're the ones who do it really well.
Absolutely. I mean, every single one of your listeners out there will have had annoying push messages coming to them time and time again, and undoubtedly most of those apps that do that then get deleted. So yeah, you're right. Having the right strategy in place, understanding how your consumers your users would want to be communicated to, and also just putting in place the right kind of functionality that understands that if somebody hasn't responded to a push over the last 2 or 3 days, and you've pushed every day, is okay, we need to try something a bit different, and we need to do it at a different time, and we have to make it more relevant. And the payoff is huge. If you get right, the payoff is huge. It means that you can minimize or reduce your acquisition spends. It means that you are building up a strong relationship with those users, and arguably building out a virality strategy, because you're building a strong relationship with those guys and getting those users to share with other users to bring their friends and family into the app for whatever reason. So, can't say enough how important it is.
Yeah, completely agree. It's a bit like online, on normal kind of web-based businesses as well. If emails aren't being read, aren't being clicked, don't keep sending the same thing. Look at how you can change things up, experiment, segment your customers better. If you've got push notifications that are going out that aren't being interacted with, is it the right push notification, or could you target that customer with something different?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to tell us a bit about how does a customer journey differ for a mobile first or mobile only business compared to one that is maybe focused on online, or traditionally more of a browser based online business?
Yeah, it's completely chalk and cheese. The digital journey is very much a search or a click on an ad, or a click on a link, and it takes you straight through to the website. So there is one step with a specifically an app-based journey. Times it by 4 or 5, because you've got a search or an ad that you click on. It takes you through to the App Store, and then you have to have a compelling reason for that individual that's on the App Store listing to then press the get button. And then once they've pressed the get button, that app has been downloaded to their device. They still haven't opened it, and then you need to get them to open it. And then once they've opened it, they've got a very small screen, probably with a brand or experience they've never come across before. So there's an education piece. So suddenly you've got that comparison between the digital journey, which is 1 step, through to the app journey, which is 5 or 6 steps. And understanding that every single one of those steps is an opportunity for your potential customer user to walk away from you is really, really important, because you then need to understand and focus on building out that initial download funnel to make sure it's as effective as possible. And then we can talk about the in-app funnel a little bit later on if you want to, but that is absolutely key. Understanding there are a number of steps you have to go through is the difference between success and failure when you're coming from a digital background.
Yeah, so I suppose you could almost compare it to like an e-commerce purchase on a website, but for the app, you're going through that entire e-commerce purchase just to download the app. And then you've actually got the real customer purchase experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the hard work doesn't just stop there. You've got these guys, they've registered, they're in the app, that's when the real hard work starts. We touched on the CRM process, building relationships. You've got that continuous onboarding piece. You've got an education piece within there with overlays and various pop-ups to take people into other aspects of the app.
Yes, you mentioned the in-app experience as well, so we might as well we'll move straight on to that. What differences do you see with in the actual kind of on-site versus in-app experience?
Yeah, I think the technology, the technology is fantastic in the app space. You tendency for people to build in native languages for iOS or Android, and the tools and functionality it tends to be very, very good. I think a lot of app developers, are building very intuitive products now. So you've got a lot of ease of use and this intuitive nature of usage, which is great. But for people coming to the app for the first time who have perhaps never used Surface, let's say you're a ride-hailing app or you're a holiday booking app, you've got a small screen. You have to maybe spend a bit of time educating yourself how to use that. When you come to the digital space, it's second nature. So that in-app experience from an education perspective becomes really important, especially for a brand, an app that has perhaps new to the market, doesn't have a particular relationship or brand saliency understanding, like some of the bigger brands that are out there in the digital space. So you've got to work a little bit harder as an app business to really sort of help the user through those initial education steps.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously on the screen there's different ways of actually interacting with the screen as well. On some of the more modern phones, you've got, I'm not sure exactly what the term is, but the amount of pressure that you actually place on the screen can change how you interact with the app. You've got swiping from the side, up and down, none of which you have on the website. You'd have pretty much everything there on the screen. You've just got your menus on one side and whatever. So yeah, kind of trying to almost, in a sense, rely on people understanding that those features are there and they can do that with their phone, but also nudging them a little bit and making it obvious that feature is there in your app.
Yeah, and interesting you're talking about features and nudging them. I think this brings us into a really interesting area as well, which is the ability to continually test. So using the right tools within your app, testing how people are using the app, the buttons they're pressing, the placement of buttons on the page, on the screen, the color of the buttons, for instance, the size, all these kind of things can be done either natively or on the fly with various tools. And I'm a great believer in continually testing, learning, and making changes if it's relevant to make those changes, because it's those small improvements. You make multiple small improvements, they add up, and can have a genuinely decent impact in the user retention and user usage, and arguably pushing people down to subscription or purchase if required.
Yeah, absolutely. is testing with within an app as easy as it is on a website? So, on a website you can install a bit of JavaScript and kind of just get going.
Yes, it can be. I mean, the what you have to do is integrate certain SDKs. SDKs are, I believe, it's a system development kit. It's a piece of coding, basically that you put in, and that coding allows you to do certain things. So, certain tools allow you to do push notifications and manage that. Certain tools allow you to do testing. So as long as you code it in, it gives you the opportunity to do that kind of testing.
What about the marketing mix? So when you're actually looking at growing your clients' apps, does the mix differ at all obviously you have mobile specific channels, but do you tend to use traditional channels as well on websites to grow apps, or do you find that actually the majority of mobile growth comes through the app specific channels?
I'm a great believer in picking the lowest hanging fruit, and what I mean by that is if people are in that app environment, they're using apps, they're more likely to consider downloading an app at that particular time. So, the vast majority of what we do as a business, or what the channels we utilize as a business, are specifically driven to or specifically fit into the mobile and the app space. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there's an awful lot of value with non-app specific channels for various reasons, whether that be a branding reason, an education reason, or even in the digital space, allowing individuals to then go through from digital to the mobile space. So lots of good reasons to do it, but 9 times out of 10, the real focus, and certainly our focus as a business, is within the app environment and the mobile environment.
What are the important things a business should consider if they're maybe launching their first app, or maybe if they're going to revamp an existing app? Are there any? Are there a couple of things you'd really recommend focusing on? And do you see any common or big mistakes that a lot of apps tend to do in the process of actually launching an app?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes most app businesses tend to do if they're launching an app, and obviously talking specifically about that launch and the run up to that launch itself, is launching completely unprepared. It can be a very expensive business driving users to your app, but launching without having the right data architecture in place, the right tools and analytics suite in place to give you the insight you need on your users, both from where they're coming from to you, whether that's from ads or what channels within the ad space, Facebooks and so on and so forth, and also understanding what those users are doing within the app when they're there. And you'd be surprised how many businesses launch and then come to us and say, hey, things aren't working, what do we do? And those particular businesses haven't got the right kind of data architecture in place. Building an organic strategy for discoverability is really important as well, and we touched on it a little bit earlier in the podcast. But virality, if you can factor virality into it in terms of getting members to share with members, or by the usage of the app, you're able to draw in other sort of data points that can allow you through the user to share with other people, are all really important. But I think the biggest mistake most app businesses take when they launch is they tend to come at it from a perspective as, look, this is the next best thing. This is going to be a super big app. Our users are going to really want this. And a lot of the time, those businesses haven't researched it. They haven't asked those users if they really want it. They haven't done research groups to really understand what the key points are within the app, or how the app should be delivered, what the journeys will be within the app. But really importantly, as I say, just making sure that those users really want the user, because if they don't, if there is no reason for that app, then why are people going to download it? They're not.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that happen a few times where maybe there's no actual real need for the app, but also apps get a bit over-engineered. People get too close to the project and start to kind of lose sight of the actual user experience. So when users do come into it, they're looking at it going, this is a bit complicated, or I don't know why I have to jump through these steps. And then actually when you step back a bit and get some user research in, or you kind of get some new staff members, for example, to run through that user experience, you kind of find those problem points where even the new staff are going, well, I didn't get why I had to fill in this form, or why I had to upload this in order to use the app. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's very easy for individuals in the business to get too close to it, and the old saying, you don't see the wood for the trees. There's fundamental things going on with the app that you just can't see, and it does take a fresh pair of eyes to really point that out.
Yeah. You mentioned virality quite a few times. Have you got any examples of companies doing it well, or just examples of features and processes around making that work really well for apps that maybe don't have it as a natural feature? So obviously something like WhatsApp, it's a communication tool. You're going to share it. You're going to invite your friends. But there might be other apps out there where they want the business wants to get the referral because it's a cheap way of getting new customers in. But as a user, you might not have any real reason to do that except for maybe a £10 referral fee.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's two. You kind of said it. There's two kind of strategies that they're not exclusive, but you've got non-incentivized referral, and you've got incentivized referral. A non-incentivized referral tends to happen if there is a need for that app user to be able to contact other people. So your comments about WhatsApp is very valid. In addition to that, you have non-incentivized referrals, which are done because the app is having a positive benefit to that individual, and they want to share that positive benefit with other people, or just enjoy what they're enjoying. So making sure that is communicated and actionable within the app becomes very much part of that non-incentivized strategy. So asking users within the app if they're enjoying it and they want to share it with friends, making sure that you have buttons for sharing, and making sharing as easy as possible within the app through the tools that are available, both natively or can be integrated through SDKs, again, really sort of works to push that kind of strategy. Then you've got the incentivized viral strategies, which are built around the reason that the individuals, benefit from sharing it with their friends, and their friends can benefit from that particular from the app being sent to them by, whatever it is, a discount on their subscription. And the key there is to really understand your metrics. So if you're incentivizing, making sure that whatever the incentive is to encourage those people to A, share, and B, download and use, is a financially viable incentive. Yeah, so in a very simplistic way, let's say the cost per acquisition of a registered user for an app, for a particular app business, was $3. If you can get people to share and you can get new users for $2.50, utilizing an incentivized process, and those users are valuable users, then that is by far a more cost-effective way of acquiring those users, or supplementing your paid user acquisition activity to bring in a lower cost user.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, both work in the right circumstances. What do you think about, or do you have a particular opinion on incentivizing with cash, or incentivizing with cash or credit, or incentivizing with usage of the tool or the product? So, for example, Netflix might give might have the option of giving £10 cash or credit to you, or giving you a free month, and just that messaging, whether that impacts it, and whether you think one is maybe better than the other.
Yeah, I think it all it depends. I don't think there's one definitive answer here. I think it all depends on what the app is, the category, what the offer is. Psychologically, there's real value in understanding, the financial value of what or the perceived financial value of what the user gets, and if you can translate that into dollars or pounds in their heads, psychologically that works far better than, oh, you get a free month. And it's age old marketing tactics, and age old marketing tactics still work today, and we shouldn't forget some of the learnings of the past, because we've got this wonderful brave new world of digital and app marketing solutions, because some of the stuff that has been instrumental in driving consumer usage for the last 100 years, the principles are still very, very relevant today. And marrying them with the tools that we've got in this new wonderful digital age will undoubtedly make any app marketing or mobile marketing solution more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuff from 50, 60 years ago might not be completely relevant now, but there's still something there. There's a reason it worked back then. We're still kind of the same, kind of the same people.
Yep.
So it's applying kind of learnings and knowledge from back then and applying it to different channels and new methods for acquiring users.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I mean, consumers are very different to where they were, but some of those principles are still very relevant.
What are some common myths or misconceptions around mobile marketing that you either hear from clients or potential clients, or maybe see on social media?
I think it's this myth that if you build it, they will come, and I still think it's very prevalent today. The newspapers, when they're having a bad news day or a slow news day, there's often a story of the 19-year-old that built an app in his bedroom and he's just sold it for $15 million. It's hard work. It is really hard work to make an app successful, and the reason being is because there are a good 6 million plus apps out there across both stores. So you've got a hugely crowded marketplace. Even if you believe that your app is unique, every single app that's in that space is looking for app users like the users that you're looking for your particular app. So, it's a hugely crowded marketplace. The users are sophisticated. We in the UK download less than one app a month now. So to convince somebody in the app space that's on the App Store to download your app rather than somebody else's is vitally important. So how do you do that? You've got to have a good product, you've got to have 5-star ratings and so on and so forth. So there's an awful lot of hard work that goes into making sure that all of those marketing elements and product elements are working in order to encourage somebody to download that app. And it's getting harder because, 2 years ago, you could spend a few $100s on Facebook and get a few hundred downloads. Now there's such a demand for Facebook as an app download channel. The prices have gone up. There's more competition in the space. So acquiring users in many ways has actually gone up as well. So, coming back to that myth, if you build it, people will come. That's not the case. The most important thing is to have a good, solid product that works, that people want, is to make sure you've got enough cash in the bank to be able to support the growth of that product. And and also getting the right experience and understanding as part of your team, whether that's internally or externally through an agency or a consultant like ourselves. And by doing that, you're going to avoid some of the big mistakes, big, expensive mistakes that a lot of businesses have made and will continue to make. So there you go. It's not easy to launch an app and make it successful, but you need to have the right tools in place to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Facebook's getting more expensive. I think that's true of a lot of channels. In mobile, are there any channels where you pretty much have to go through an agency to get into, or is everything open to anyone? So if I went onto Upwork or freelancer.com, got someone to build me an app, would I as an individual have access to everything?
Yeah, I guess you would. I mean, that's a really interesting question. That's never been asked me before. But you're right. I think most of the channels, most of the tools, are out there. I think where an agency can make a massive difference is in their knowledge and expertise and experience. If a business like ourselves, we've launched, I don't know, 200, 250, 300 apps over the last 10, 12 years. We've had some great success. We've also made mistakes. And on the back of that, we as a business understand what the more likely channels, solutions, tools are that you need to, levers are that you need to pull to be successful. We also know what the big pitfalls are. So as a consequence of that, we can help our clients to avoid those very expensive pitfalls that invariably most app businesses can make.
Yeah, and I suppose as an agency, you've got a much more visibility over the entire app ecosystem. So might know what's working in other categories, what's not working in those categories, and whether if suddenly downloads spike in a certain category, you might be able to use that knowledge to actually benefit other category apps.
Yeah, I would say this because obviously I run an agency, but I think the value in that experience and knowledge across the broad app ecosystem, it's hugely valuable. It's hugely valuable, and as I say, can save a huge amount of money.
What about pet peeves? Do you have any pet peeves in marketing, or particularly when it comes to apps? But I guess if there's something else there, feel free to mention that.
Let's touch on what we talked about a little bit earlier, which is old school marketing. I think with all the tools, with the speed of distribution of advertising opportunity, with the scale that you can generate very quickly utilizing the likes of Facebook or Google Universal ads or whatever, there's a tendency, I think, for a lot of marketeers to be driven down the channels and be excited about all the tech that's available to you to try and reach those users and bring them into the app. But some of the old ideals of typical marketing, price, place, promotion strategy, all those kind of things are still very, very valid. And as I said before, if you can marry old school thinking and success with the modern tools and channels you've got, you're going to be far more successful than just throwing everything at Facebook. I think, you asked about pet peeves, really don't forget about some of the good stuff of the past. It's still very relevant today.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, a lot of marketers, a lot of companies focus on short term, and what's getting results now. And while I'm not the biggest fan of brand marketing, I think there's a tendency to try and get the sale right now, put an ad in front of someone, we want them to purchase it. Whereas people could probably spend a bit more time building up relationships with customers, showing off what their brand is about, I read a really interesting thing today or yesterday about Marks and Spencers, actually, and they, I think in World War II, they shifted a lot of their production into certain types of clothing that were really, really useful for the country during the war. And then people remembered that afterwards. And they got a lot of, they built up a lot of goodwill doing that. And
Yeah.
it's obviously it's not something every company could do, but, it's kind of looking for those opportunities just to make yourself front of mind for a customer so that they come to you and you're not just relying on putting ads out there to bring customers in.
I think it's really interesting that I didn't know that Marks and Spencer had done that, but I think again this is coming back to something we've kind of touched on in this chat today, is that the fundamental psychology of individuals. I think people in general like other people or companies that do positive things, that do good, and I guess what you're saying with Marks and Spencer is because what they did at a time of need was very relevant and very beneficial, that the resonance of what they did in the sense of doing good had an impact, a continued impact ongoing after the Second World War. And it's clearly going to be very relevant now with what's going on as we fight coronavirus, and those businesses that do something to help in this day and age, in whatever way they do, will benefit from the good things they're doing now, further down the line, hopefully 3-6 months from now. That goodwill will be remembered.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely quite a few companies out there doing things particularly for the NHS, which is great.
God bless them.
So final question for now, or for the podcast. If you could kill off one marketing channel or tactic, what would it be?
Oh, not a channel or a tactic, but ad fraud in the app space. We're very, very good at filtering it out, and there are a lot of tools out there. There's, a lot of the ad tech attribution businesses do a really good job of it. But for a lot of app businesses that are going into the acquisition space without real understanding, and get tempted into buying cheap downloads off networks that are utilizing, more often than not intentionally, poor traffic that is fraudulent in many ways, whether that's bot traffic, whether it's organic traffic that is being classed as paid. It's a huge frustration. It has a big impact on the quality of downloads, the cost of real downloads, user retention. So fundamentally, it has a massive impact in overall user acquisition in the space if it's not managed. I would say it's potentially put a lot of startups out of business where they've actually unwittingly been forced down channels where they're actually buying poor, fraudulent quality users.
And does this tend to happen where the business itself has gone into a channel and accidentally bought, paying for really bad traffic, or is there a case that potentially companies are attacking other companies with it? I'm not sure if it happens much, but
no, it's interesting. I don't think that the companies attacking other companies is the case. I think we're all very complicit in this because there's a tendency for people, for businesses to go to networks and say, I want the cheapest download possible. I want to get a download for 10 cents, and as a consequence of that, the networks would then go out and find a download for 10 cents. More often than not, that download is going to be a fraudulent download. So, it's not what I'm saying here is we have to be, whether we're an agency or whether we're an app owner, whether we're an intermediary, whether we're a network, we have to be responsible to say, look, there is a value to what we do, and there is a cost to gaining a user, and realistically, to get a user below what you could potentially be buying on Facebook, less, 20 or 30%, or after below that, you're starting to get into areas that are going to be some, at worst fraudulent, at best naive in terms of how you download those individuals. So we have to understand the value of a user is the value of the user, not a 10-cent download.
Yeah, it's that saying, you get what you pay for, isn't it?
Absolutely. You don't want to pay over the odds for them. That's the key. But if you can make $100 out of a user over 12 months, then trying to get that user for 20 cents is probably not going to work for you, because you won't get that user, that downloader, for 20 cents. You might have to pay $5, $6, $7 for that engaged user.
Yeah, and I think obviously everyone wants the cheapest users, and I think every business is going to be thinking, well, we want them at the cheapest possible price. But you've got to be looking at, what is the expected lifetime value of these customers, and what are we happy to pay? So, like you say, if you're going to get $100 off someone, then you probably should be happy to pay $10, $20, even maybe $30, because you're going to pay for yourself, maybe up to 10 times over. That's fine. There's money there to then pay for your costs, pay for staff and things. And once you scale it up and you're doing tens of thousands of people at those prices, it works. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I've had it, in fact, I think it was just before I did a little bit of work with you. I was working for an app, and we got installs for about 50 pence. And these installs and it was a particular type of ad that worked really well. So obviously the company started spending more money on them and pushing them out wider. And then when we looked at the actual user metrics, people were basically using the free trial, doing what they'd come to do through that particular ad, and then leaving. Because they were super cheap people who were never going to pay the subscription price we were asking for at that time.
Yeah.
And then so once you kind of dig into the metrics, you go, actually, these ads might be generating hundreds of users at such a cheap cost, but there's no value at all here. We're not getting any subscribers. So actually our CPA might have been like £300-400 because we weren't actually converting any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also highlights another key thing we talked about earlier, which is the data architecture, getting clear understanding of who your users are, where they're coming from, what they're doing within the app. So I can't emphasize enough how important getting the right data is in terms of your overall success, because that's a great example of how understanding your users can make a big impact on where you spend your advertising money.
Yeah, and then the same at the other end of the system, the really valuable users, if you're identifying where they're coming from, what they're doing, like what they're spending money on, or what their engagement is with the subscription, you can then tailor your onboarding experience, the actual product experience itself, your emails, your push notifications, and your ads. And you should be able to find more of those customers, convert more of those customers, and you've hopefully got a successful business.
That's it.
Yeah, it sounds simple.
It's as easy as that, Will.
Cool. Well, Mick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really, really interesting stuff about apps. I know I've done a bit of work in apps before, but obviously, speaking to an expert, I've learned a lot today.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you very much, Will, for the opportunity to chat to you, answer your questions, and obviously be part of this podcast. I hope it's a huge success.
Thank you. Cheers. Lovely stuff there from Mick. I think one of the biggest things to come out of that is that you need to be focusing on product engagement and customer retention. If you're not doing this properly, you'll lose about 80% of your users within about 3 months. And it's a huge amount of money and time and effort that you've wasted. And I've seen this happen myself. I've seen what happens if you rely on customer service, email marketing, and other marketing communications. No matter how good you are at those channels, if the product itself isn't working hard to retain your customers, they'll churn. And once they've churned, they're gone for good. About 1 in 4 people abandon an app after the first use. So you haven't even got time to rely on these other channels to, explain what your app does or, answer questions. Once they've deleted the app, it's gone. And pretty soon after that, the unsubscribe from marketing will come as well. So make sure you've got proper analytics set up within your app so you can see not only what individuals and different cohorts are achieving with the product or service, but also how they move around and engage with the functionality of the app. In a similar way to an e-commerce store where you'd want to know what items individuals are purchasing, what their average order values are, etc., so you can personalize communications and begin to segment customers, you also want to know more generally how people are actually browsing the app or website. Are you making them take a more complicated journey than necessary? If you're new to the mobile space and want some advice or even have an existing mobile app, please don't hesitate to contact Mick or myself. That's all for today. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. And if you have any questions about mobile apps and growth, please send them over to will@customerswhoclick.com. In the next episode of Customers Who Click, I'll be speaking with James Bott, founder of the ASO company, now part of Jellyfish Group, where he's the Chief Solutions Officer for mobile. We'll be talking about ASO, mobile strategy, and of course some marketing pet peeves. But until then, keep those customers clicking.